Imagine an artist, right? But not just focused on one thing. Someone who really excelled across the board. A
Hmm.
poet whose words, spark national feeling. A playwright holding up a mirror to society as it changed. A broadcaster, an actor, even a composer.
Yeah, shaping the soundtrack of a nation, in a way.
Exactly. Today, we're doing a deep dive into Hassan Sheikh Mumin, a truly massive figure in Somali culture. The question is, how does one person end up embodying so much of a nation's story?
Well, the sources we have here, they give us a really fascinating look into his life and his art. We can trace his early involvement in politics, before independence,
Right.
then his career after, working in arts and government, and how big political shifts, well, how they affected what he could create,
Yeah.
and of course his legacy.
So our mission here, really for you listening, is to get a handle on the most important parts of Hassan Sheikh Mumin's life, his work. Why does he still matter? What do his creations tell us about Somalia during some really pivotal times?
Definitely.
Okay, so let's unpack this. Starting at the beginning, he was born in Zalia, British Somaliland, 1931.
Right. And then the family moved to Barama when he was about 9. That seems to be where he got his education, went to a local madrasa too.
And context here is important, isn't it? He belonged to the Jibril Uni subclan.
Yes, part of the Gadabuursi, a key group in that region. And this background, this community grounding, it probably shaped his early thinking, his art.
And it seems his political side woke up pretty early, too. He got involved with the Somali Youth League, the SYL.
That's right, yeah. Somalia's first political party, pushing for independence from colonial rule. A really big deal at the time.
And he wasn't just a member, was he? He was actively creating for them.
No, exactly. The sources say he wrote his very first poem for an SYL rally. This was in Barama back in the early 1950s.
Wow. So a young artist using words to power up the independence movement. That really shows the connection, doesn't it, between art and politics right from the get-go.
Absolutely. And that early commitment, it gives us important context for his later work, the themes he explored.
So fast forward. Independence happens in 1960. What role does he play then?
Well, he steps into some pretty influential positions.
Yeah.
From 1965 to 68, he was the resident poet, playwright, and lecturer at Radio Mogadishu.
Radio Mogadishu, that must have been a huge platform.
Oh, incredibly influential. Especially then. It was central for culture, for nation building. So being there put him right at the heart of shaping, the national conversation.
And not just radio, right? He also worked in the Department of Education and Culture.
That's right. Deeply involved in the institutions that were meant to foster Somali arts and intellectual life.
But then things changed dramatically. The military coup in 1969.
Yes, that was a major turning point. The Supreme Revolutionary Council, the SRC, took power, and it had a serious impact on artistic freedom.
How so?
The sources are quite clear. They say various cultural works, and specifically mention his poetry, were banned under the new regime.
Banned, so direct censorship.
It seems so. It really highlights that tension, doesn't it, between artistic expression and political control, when power feels threatened by art.
And what did that mean for Mumin personally?
Well, the pressure must have been immense. He actually left Mogadishu, went to Djibouti for a time, before eventually heading back to Barama.
That move, leaving the capital, speaks volumes.
It really does. But even with these challenges, his most significant work, Should Be Only Good, Leopard Among the Women, which came out earlier in 65,
Right.
its impact continued, maybe even gained new meaning in that restrictive environment.
Tell us more about Shabil Nagud. Why is it considered such a cornerstone?
It tackled some really critical social issues, things that were bubbling up in that pre-independence, early post-independence period.
Like what specifically?
Things like the changing place of women in society, the effects of people moving to cities, urbanization, shifts in traditional ways of life, and the growing awareness of education's importance. Big societal shifts.
And even if society addressed some of those things later, the play itself has endured.
Absolutely. The sources call it a mainstay of Somali literature. Its themes clearly have a timeless quality.
And it reached an audience beyond Somalia.
It did. It was translated into English in 1974, Leopard Among the Women, by Bogumiya Andrzejewski, a very important scholar in Somali studies.
And published by Oxford University Press. That's significant academic recognition.
Hugely significant. OUP publishing it, universities including it in their courses, Oxford included. It shows its value not just as literature, but as a window into Somali culture for the wider world.
And the truly amazing part, Mumin wrote the play and composed the music for it.
Yes, both. It just underscores his incredible range of talents. Playwright, composer, all in one.
There's a quote in the script from the heroine Shalayo. It seems incredibly powerful.
It really is. Let me see. Here. Women have no share in the encampments of this world, and it is men who made these laws to their own advantage.
Wow.
It goes on. By God, men are our enemies. Though we ourselves nurtured them, we suckled them at our breasts, and they maimed us. We do not share peace with them.
That's incredibly direct, raw emotion, a powerful critique.
Absolutely. You can feel the frustration, the sense of injustice, the betrayal. It's a stark commentary on gender inequality within that patriarchal context. It must have hit hard then, and honestly, it still resonates.
So moving on from that landmark play, his creative work didn't stop, even with all the political turmoil.
Not at all. Later in life, in 1997, he wrote and composed another significant piece, Samakuwar.
Samakuwar, maybe less known internationally.
Perhaps less than Shabil Good, but incredibly important within the Somali context. It actually became the national anthem of the Republic of Somaliland.
The national anthem, wow. So his artistic voice continued to shape identity, even defining a national symbol for Somaliland.
Precisely. It shows his lasting impact, adapting to new political realities, still contributing powerful symbols of belonging.
A life filled with such creation and, well, navigating difficult times. How was he remembered when he passed away?
Hassan Sheikh Mumin died in Oslo, Norway in January 2008. He was in his mid-70s.
But he was buried back in Somalia.
Yes, in Barama, 10 days later, in his father's mausoleum. And the sources emphasize the scale of the funeral. Hundreds attended.
Who was there?
All sorts of people. Government ministers, opposition leaders, poets, singers, fellow artists, and even a delegation from Djibouti. It shows the immense respect he commanded across different groups.
And Djibouti honored him too, didn't they?
They did. Posthumously, their government gave him their highest cultural award. It just cements his status as a major cultural figure, not just in Somalia or Somaliland, but in the whole region.
So wrapping up this deep dive, Hassan Sheikh Mumin, he really was a vital voice, wasn't he? Across poetry, plays, music.
Indispensable.
Yeah.
His work constantly engaged with the political realities around him. Shabil Nagud is maybe the prime example of art reflecting and challenging society.
And Samakuwar shows how art creates symbols of identity, in this case for Somaliland.
And we hope this exploration has shown you how powerful that link between art and society can be. How one person's creativity can really contribute to a nation's sense of self, especially through times of big change.
So maybe a final thought for you to consider. Those themes in Shabil Nagud from decades ago, women's roles, tradition, change, how much do they still echo today? Not just in Somalia, perhaps, but maybe closer to home in your own community.
Yeah, what can we learn from artists like Mumin? Those who dare to speak truth, or at least their truth, even when things get politically difficult. Something to think about.